Hey folks, we've got a new patch out for Dominions today. Dominions 5.59. God, we've had Dominions 5.58 for so long. It's going to be weird seeing a new number at the bottom of the screen. There's a bunch of bug fixes, but some of these are pretty impactful on game mechanics. I kind of liked when I was going back and doing an update for every patch. I might try to do that going forward. The thing is, to do one of these updates, I actually have to understand all the things in the patch, and it's harder than you think sometimes. So let's get into it. There had been some issues with crashing and whatnot with if you had certain like video cards, and basically more the detection for the new cards is going to be better, and so hopefully there will be fewer of those issues in the future. Apparently in previous games, the disciple AI in the disciples game could get their army stuck in friendly territory. Like if they moved into your territory, like they would not really be very good at getting their army out. And it probably just goes to the fact that, like in Dominions, in many ways, like an allied disciple player is kind of like an enemy you can't hurt. Anyway, but it looks like they fixed this. There's a fix for certain remote spells not being castable underwater. I'm going to switch back and forth between this and Discord, where like Loggy's been helping me get all the answers here. So there were a bunch of spells basically in one of the patches that used to be castable underwater, but couldn't target underwater. And like a great example of this, I didn't know many of these, but like Murdering Winter was always one of them, because I remember having played like against Atlantis, or I think it was actually against the Relay, and they were just peppering me with Murdering Winter from the water, and it felt horrible because I could never return fire. God damn it. But yeah, apparently you weren't able to cast these by mistake anymore underwater. Now you can. You still can't target underwater with most of these. But anyway, I think it's a big long list. There they got fixed. And now this is a big one. This is probably the biggest one of the whole patch. Is communion boosts now affect penetration properly? There's so much to go into here. If you look at it, Loggy's posted the formulas here before. But the important thing basically is that the way the formula had been before is you were taking how much item penetration you had, etc., and then you were taking how much, like your visible path level on the character, right? So if you were like a Earth 3 mage that cast Earth power, you'd be Earth 4, right? That's the number that would go here. And then you add 1 to that, and you subtract from it. There's like an unnecessary set of parentheses here. And then you subtract from it the spell's primary path level, which is, we can say it's like, let's say it was like a higher level spell. Like let's say it was a level 6 spell, but you were able to cast it because you had a communion, right? So it would be like your 4 plus 1 minus 6. So you're actually at like -1, and then you divide that by 2. And apparently dividing always rounds down in the C engine or whatever they're using here. So I think that would actually go to -1. So you would have a -1, but because they didn't want you to have a -1 as being penalized by entering a communion, there was a max of 0, so it could never go below 0. That was the old thing. Notable things about it, you don't see communion level in here anywhere. And some of that was they didn't want, like, communions are pretty strong in Dominion, so they didn't want to like keep have these be too strong. So now basically it's the bonus from items, and this is not going to be divided by 2. But then we have a bunch of things which are going to be divided by 2, and it's the visible path level. So and then plus the communion boost, and then minus the spell's primary level, right? So let's go through like a really basic example. If you are trying to cast Master and Slave, which is Astral 8, right? If you have, let's say 2 pin bonus, you're a level 7 mage, right? So this would be a very powerful mage. And you have, let's say, a really big communion. You're on top of like a 32 mage communion. You would get, in this case, like a 5 path communion path boost. That's the number corresponding to 32. It's 2 to the 5. So yeah, it would be 7 plus 5 minus 8, right? Which would be 4. And divided by 2 equals 2. So you would get, effectively, from this side of the equation, you would get, or this part of the equation, you would get a 2 bonus. And I think we said you had a 2 bonus over here, so it would be 4. Whereas before, there wouldn't be anything coming from this side. The other thing, though, is that just in the way this was written, like the thresholds for getting an extra like pin bonus is like, in this, forget communions for a second. If you were a normal mage and you were working in this formula, you would need, like, if you were casting Soul Slay, right, and you were a level 3 mage, you wouldn't get any pin bonus from that. But if you were level 4, you would go ahead and get your first pin bonus. When you go to level 5, you don't get an extra one. And then when you go to level 6, you get your next one. So every 2 levels, you get a pin bonus, but it starts at the first level above. And that's due to this +1 here. Because the formula is changed to this, if you're an Astral 3 mage casting Soul Slay, you don't get your first pin bonus until you get to Astral 5. So that's a kind of big difference. I mean, that's going to... So it's kind of weird, because this is definitely like a buff to communions, a pretty significant buff. It's not going to affect, like buffs you put on your troops, really, for the most part. But it will affect like a bunch of offensive spells like Soul Slays, and then all of the MR negates battlefield-wide spells, which is not a ton of, but there's a good number of. But yeah, so it's a pretty big buff to like Astral Communions. So there's a lot of death spells that have MR checks too, so Death Communions. There's like Curse of Stones 2 and Earth. But it's a bit of a nerf to single casters using like pin bonuses. Not a big nerf, like a tiny little nerf. But that's that. And next one we have is Fix for Missiles, sometimes hitting incorrect body part. I actually don't know what this one is, but presumably they didn't hit the correct body part, and now they do. This could actually be significant for affecting like projectile damage overall, because if you get like limb capped and stuff on damage, that can really affect how killy things are. I don't actually know what this change is. I probably should have asked. Rituals that should sometimes do horror mark didn't do this. The big one here being Lesser Horror. So Send Lesser Horror is one of the more efficient spells in the game. Like, it's really good. It's a little annoying for most nations to cast, because usually you need to stack up several boosters, because it's not just like a single path. You have to have it's Astral 3 Blood 2. And there's not many nations that have like straight up Astral 3 Blood 2 casters, and if they do, they're almost always capital only. So you're normally putting boosters on these guys. The thing with this is you're going to now get like a 10% chance to get horror marked with every cast, thereabouts. That's what Loggy said, and then that's also pretty much what my testing has indicated, because I went and tested it a few times to make sure this one got hit. And yeah, so the problem with that is not the problem. I mean, I think it's a good change, because it adds a lot of flavor. It definitely feels more dangerous messing with the occult now. But the problem as a player, if you're casting Send Lesser Horror, is you'll end up getting these mages, which are either going to be like really good cap only mages you probably don't want to get horror marked, or like lesser mages that you've loaded up with gear, and inevitably some of them are going to get murked by horrors. And if the cost of horrors is just like 9 slaves, maybe not a big deal. If the cost of horrors is like losing a Starshine Skullcap, a Crystal Coin, and a Bloodthorn, all of a sudden now we're pretty expensive. So it's not going to kill you right away. You probably honestly can stack up quite a few horrors. So in some ways, this is still like in the flavor territory, because like if you could sit there and cast Sin Lesser Horror 20 times and then eventually it gets you, then like let's just pretend that's the number. It's probably not, but it's probably around there. It's not like you're going to cast it 10 times on average and get murked by a horror. It's probably going to be more around like 20. So, if you do that, you amortize the cost of a Starshine Skullcap, a crystal coin, we'll say, which is, we're now being a little generous with how much gear you're going to have to put on a dude. So that's like 30 gems and let's say 15 slaves for a Bloodthorn. That would be getting an Astral one, Blood one, all the way up to Sin Lesser Horror. So oftentimes that'll be less gear than that. But you amortize that, which I think we said 30 plus 15 blood slaves over 20. So let's pretend like it's 35 total or something. Or 40 total, because that makes the math easy. We amortize it over 20. It's like an extra 2 gems per cast. I mean, that's significant. If the original casting cost is 9 blood slaves, which I think is the cost for Sin Lesser Horror, and you add to it 2 gems, that's that's like almost a 50% cost increase. But yeah, I think this is still more in the flavor territory, especially since you tend to make that payment later rather than earlier. Anyway, very cool. I'm glad this got fixed. Faster creation of games with very many players. That's awesome. Fixed bug with the Worm Mage becoming an unkillable ghost. This one's kind of interesting. I definitely saw this bug report where I forget exactly what could cause it, but the Worm Mage could become this like unkillable dude, and then the battle kept going. It was pretty annoying. But yeah, anyway, that's been fixed. Thawing didn't work properly. No idea about that one. Phoenix Pyre no longer works on being swallowed. There was actually a weird bug. You could actually see this in my Bogaroos game, where the dirty evil goblins were throne rushing. And we went to stop them, and we valiantly teleported Baba Yaga and then one of the white mage Staretsa on top of it. And Baba Yaga was going to lay down some buffs and some other things and get returned home because she had a Ring of Returning on her. Of course, she got Soul Slayed. Thanks, game. And then the white mage thug was going to Phoenix Pyre and like try to just tank the army. It was going to be like a shot in the dark. Maybe this could work. She ended up getting eaten by a giant, but because she was Phoenix Pyred, she would get killed after the battle, and then she would respawn because she had Phoenix Pyre, and she would respawn, and it would cause another battle. And then the same thing could happen. There was a flying giant that would always attack. He would kill her and eat her, and then another thing would happen, and then he would fly in, kill her, and eat her, and the battle would keep going like that. I forget what happened. Eventually, the loop broke in my game. But if you set it up where the thing that's eating you is basically always going to eat you, like it's never going to not eat you. So I think, yeah, I mean, if you have like a really weak chassis that's never going to kill the thing or never going to retreat or never going to whatever, this can actually go infinitely. And so it was like crashing games. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, that's been fixed now. So what that actually practically means, well, I think it was always the case. Swallow is a really rare trait. But what it means is that this is now like officially a Phoenix Pyre counter, right? If you eat somebody, Phoenix Pyre is disabled. So that's kind of cool. Kind of makes sense. You're digesting their essence. Klep art didn't work. I have no idea what this is. The Temitzel range weapon wasn't always visible, so that's been fixed. Most of these other ones are we're probably not going to go through, but I just want to go through the ones above this. Map drawing performance improvements. That's actually potentially really nice. I know some laptops like freaked out when you're like zooming on the map, like going in and out, where it's having to redraw it. Save bug fix for very large games. Very nice. AI item equip bug fix. Not actually sure what that is. Minor map editor fix Fix for sensor weapon stat box. I actually don't know what this was, but I went and looked at the sensor weapon and things look fine. And then stat and typo fixes, probably hiding some very important big changes. Anyway, small update, and just wanted to share this with y'all. So yeah, take care, everyone. Peace.